we're getting to that point in the year, that date on the calendar where NASCAR is going to have to start making some difficult decisions. And in some cases, as we've seen today, those decisions might be made for them. We've got some stuff to discuss today, y'all. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric, and welcome to Out of the Groove. And like I said at the beginning, we have some stuff to talk about today. Pretty serious stuff. You guys know me. I usually like to come in here, try to be as full of energy as I possibly can. Doesn't matter what kind of day I'm having. I try to turn it on for the camera and bring you guys all the hottest topics around the world of NASCAR in as entertaining of a way as I possibly can. I like to give you guys quick opinions and all that great stuff, fill you in on all the details. But today, I'll be honest, it was a little tougher than usual to walk through that door, turn the camera on. I always have to adjust this lighting because I have not lit myself well on camera in years, so always trying to do all that stuff. It was more difficult than usual to do that today because unfortunately I don't have a lot of good news to discuss on today's episode. Today's been full of breaking news, some of it from NASCAR directly, some of it actually from the government, which unfortunately is going to affect NASCAR. So I have a couple things to discuss today. We're going to start with the stuff that came directly from NASCAR though. We're going to talk about the next gen car, the car that was scheduled to debut, to premiere at the start of the upcoming 2021 season. It would be ready in time for the Daytona 500. That plan has now, unsurprisingly perhaps, changed. Jordan Bianchi from The Athletic broke the news this morning that NASCAR is planning on delaying the release of the next gen car, although according to his report, they're still looking at bringing it out sometime in 2021. Unfortunately now though, it will not be ready at the beginning of the season. According to the report, NASCAR is meeting with race teams, a lot of people involved this week. Some of them they're meeting with today, others they're meeting with later in the week. Not just about this next gen and delaying it, but also about the revised schedule that we're gonna have to see for the 2020 season, which is still kind of TBD as more and more races become in jeopardy. Those meetings are taking place this week, but according to Jordan Bianchi from The Athletic, it's already been decided on NASCAR side of things that they're going to have to delay the release of the next gen car. Now the reason I say this isn't too surprising is because the next gen car, it's been billed as sort of a long-term cost-saving race car that's going to help race teams stay in business long-term. And the reason it's supposed to cut so many costs is because a lot of the teams, rather than manufacturing a lot of the parts themselves, are going to be getting their parts from third-party suppliers. And the problem NASCAR has right now is with all of the closures around the globe, around this country even just specifically, due to the COVID-19 virus. Those suppliers who are already on a pretty tight, aggressive schedule, many of them have seen their production severely limited, and in some cases I'm sure have ultimately shut down altogether because of this. And it's been well documented, we've talked about on this show for over a year probably now, that NASCAR was really aggressive with the schedule for the next gen car. Getting that car ready by Daytona of 2021 was going to be a really difficult feat to accomplish. A lot of industry insiders were skeptical that they'd be able to do it, but up until probably a couple weeks ago, NASCAR, from every report they had made, and pretty much all the reports coming from teams, they were on schedule. Against all the odds, they were on schedule to get the car ready by February. Unfortunately, hitting a major roadblock like this basically has ended those hopes, which isn't too surprising. That's why I say it's not too surprising, because NASCAR, we already knew, was on a tight schedule trying to get this thing ready. They were really pumping it out fast. We knew that any significant hindrance was going to end those hopes, and that's what this is. I mean, this is practically a worldwide shutdown. Yeah, that'll do it. Now, in Jordan's article in The Athletic, he interviewed Go Fast Racing's manager, I believe, Mason St. Hilaire, general manager, I should say. He offered a couple interesting quotes. First one, we're supposed to get the cars theoretically in July. Right now, I can't fathom that happening. So I think, in my own opinion, that it would be a good idea on all of ours to delay. I think for organizations to have to concentrate both on the 2021 car and their racing programs, it's one of the things where this isn't a priority at the moment. Now, according to these initial reports, it sounds like there are two likely options for NASCAR going forward now. Since the car won't be ready for Daytona, when will the car be ready? From the sounds of it, the first option is to do something very similar to what NASCAR did back in 2007 when they were introducing the Car of Tomorrow, the COT, the Gen 5 for the first time. That year in 2007, they sort of slowly phased in the Car of Tomorrow. Some races that year were run still with the old Gen 4 car body, you know, the old cars, but some races were run with the new car. So it was a mix. You saw two completely different looking race cars that handled completely differently, that raced completely differently on track. Sometimes on week to week it would change. It sounds like that is one possible option for them to do in 2021. Run Gen 6 cars some races, and here and there sprinkle in some next gen car races, maybe at different types of tracks as the year goes on. So at least in that case, the car still shows up in 2021. That's not the worst thing in the world, but it would definitely be a difficult undertaking, I'm sure, for many of the teams to manage two completely different types of race cars. I can imagine that being difficult. These Cup teams are big. I think the big teams like the Hendricks, the Joe Gibbses, the Penske's could probably handle it. I think they have the capacity to handle it more or less. Obviously, depending on how everyone comes out of this whole hiatus, that still remains to be seen. The smaller teams, though, I can imagine that would be very difficult to handle. The second option is a little bit different. The second option is to just run Gen 6 cars from the start of the year at Daytona up to a certain point in the middle of the season, maybe like, I don't know, in June. I'm just making that up, that's not in the report. And then starting in June, run next gen the rest of the season, and then from then on, just next gen. So basically pick a point in the season to just stop running Gen 6 and start with the next gen. And you just pick a random date in the schedule, and that would be set. The good thing here, no matter which plan they end up going with, assuming they go with one of these plans, is that the car will still be debuting in 2021. They're not talking about debuting the next gen car for an entire year and just shelving it until 2022. I say that's good news. Part of me does want them to just wait until 2022. I don't really want to see two different types of race cars on track in the same season. I don't think that's optimal. Of those two options they presented, though, I definitely prefer option number 2, where you just run Gen 6 cars, say for the first, I don't know, 10 races of the season, and then race 11 starting there, next gen the rest of the year. I don't want to see them switching week to week, back from Gen 6 to next gen, Gen 6. A lot of gens. I just keep saying the word gen. It's losing all meaning. Whether it's the beginning of the season or middle of the season, I'd like NASCAR just pick a point to make the full transition, and I just want them to stick with it. I don't really want to see them just kind of darting in and out, changing cars every week. That's too much to keep track of. I'd much rather them just put a hard line in the sand and say, this is when we will switch to the next gen car. Take it or leave it. But again, part of me does kind of want them to just delay the whole thing to 2022. I know 2021 keeps being billed as the next generation of NASCAR. New schedule changes, possibly some new racetracks next year, new cars, all that stuff. At this point, with everything that's happened, I just want them to do this as smoothly as possible. And if that means pushing the whole car one more year, or in this case now, just a few more months, I'm all for it. I don't want them rushing it. I don't want them putting any added strain on these race teams, because Lord knows these teams right now cannot take a whole lot more strain, especially some of the mid-sized smaller teams. Too much more strain could be bad news for them. It's a tough call. Again, not one that's entirely surprising, but it's good for NASCAR to, it sounds like, be having these conversations early enough. We're still pretty early in this year. It's still only March, guys. It's spring just started, right? So I'm glad that they're having these talks early enough in the year, and they're at least maybe making a plan early on here so that they can have plenty of time to react to it. But yeah, it's not optimal. It's obviously suboptimal with the way they've been billing everything. Everyone's been so excited for next year with the new car. This is suboptimal, but it's not entirely unexpected with everything we knew beforehand. Anyway, that's the first bit of news. Second bit of news doesn't come from NASCAR directly, and still remains to be seen whether or not it'll actually have an impact on the NASCAR season, but we have to talk about the government. Earlier today, the governor of Virginia announced that they would be extending the stay-at-home order for that state through June 10th, which in other words means you cannot gather in groups of more than 10, or there's a whole lot of rules associated with that. That means probably a lot of businesses are still going to be closed for a pretty extended period of time in that state. But the reason this affects NASCAR is that Martinsville, the weekend May 7th through 9th, was tentatively scheduled as a possible return for NASCAR. As of now, NASCAR has only postponed races through Dover the first weekend of May. Martinsville, the second weekend of May, was tentatively expected to be the return. Obviously, things subject to change. Nobody's been guaranteeing Martinsville by any chance, but that was kind of the hope, is that Martinsville would be a possible day to return. Obviously, with the way things have progressed around the country, around the world, that seems more and more unlikely. But now with the governor of Virginia basically banning any large groups through June 10th, Martinsville is not happening. NASCAR has not come out directly and said it. They've left a statement that says we are still continuing to discuss with local officials and assess all of our options, etc., etc. But what that really means is NASCAR is not going to be racing at Martinsville, at least not in the month of May, unless something shocking happens, because technically the governor could come back in a couple weeks and retract that statement. They could move the date back up inside of that window. That's possible, but I don't see it happening. My non-expert opinion is that is not happening. Martinsville night race will not happen as scheduled. Again, has not been confirmed by NASCAR, but that's pretty much what it looks like. I'm one of those guys, I like to be positive. I don't like to bring people down, but I'm not gonna give anyone too much false hope here. Very unlikely that Martinsville, the night race, happens as scheduled. So take that for what it's worth. The Indianapolis 500, slated for May 24th, has already been postponed to August. The Coke 600 / All-Star race are the 2 weeks after Martinsville. Those races, different state, they're not in Virginia, they're in North Carolina. North Carolina's current stay-at-home order ends April 29th. Obviously that could be extended, but that's another factor here, is all the race teams I think all the race teams are located in North Carolina. And so right now, nobody at the race teams can go into work and work on race cars until April 29th. I mean, they can work from home, but you can't actually sit there and work on the cars until at least April 29th. So if that gets extended into May, then the All-Star Race and Coke 600 very likely will be in jeopardy as well. This is a very fluid situation. Things continue to change. Things aren't changing quite as quick as they were a few weeks back when it felt like the sky was falling, everything was happening so fast. Things aren't happening quite that fast now, but there are still changes coming every single day. Obviously, it's a tough time for anyone who works in motorsports, anyone who works really in the entire world, in the entire country. It's tough. I don't mean to just focus and ignore all the rest of the world, but I'm focusing on racing because that's what this show is. But in the racing world, I know plenty of people who have seen their income disappear almost entirely. I know a lot of race teams, even some of the bigger race teams, have been forced to make some tough decisions, and there are many employees out there who are not, and many of them are laid off, many of them are not getting paid currently. Hopefully we'll start getting paid again once the season picks back up. This is ultimately ending up a lot closer and will likely end up right around what I considered my worst case scenario a few weeks back when this whole deal sort of started. Obviously back then we didn't have nearly the information we have now, and knowing what I know now, I'd probably go back and adjust some of those statements. But many people a couple weeks ago when this all kind of started thought mid-May or June was worst case scenario. It looks like that might be where we're headed. And hopefully it doesn't go much, or hopefully it doesn't go past that at all. Hopefully by the end of May, hopefully by June, we're a little bit back to normal. Hopefully we can get back to racing, even if we have to race without fans for a couple weeks. Whatever it takes at this point to help get some of these people back to work, help get some of these people competing once again, and give fans like us something to watch, something to enjoy. Obviously can't do that until proper safety measures have been implemented, and public health obviously is priority number one right here, but hopefully all of that starts to reach a more stable position sooner rather than later, and we can get back to doing what we love faster than many potentially are projecting. So it's a tough situation obviously out there. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's a tough situation. I was disappointed when I woke up to all this news. I'm sure many of you, if you didn't know it already, are definitely probably a little bit disappointed after watching this video. But everyone just keep doing your part out there to stay healthy. Encourage everyone around you to stay healthy and follow all of the guidelines people are laying out for you. Don't take this thing lightly, obviously, because it's affecting a whole lot of people. So that's all I really have to say. I'm not going to go on any further. I'm not an expert, just laying it out there and kind of talking, verbalizing my thoughts. That's what I do. Let me know what you guys think. Give me your thoughts down in the comments. I always read pretty much all the comments on my videos. I get hundreds of comments per video, and I read almost all of them. You might be surprised to believe, but I read probably 90% of comments I get on videos like this. So leave a comment, give me your thoughts down below. Thank you guys a ton for watching. Follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Big thank you to my Patreon supporters as well. Got some exciting things in the works. Natalie Decker will be on the show later this week, so if you have questions for Natalie, leave those down in the comments as well. I got some other stuff, all the other videos I'm working on as well. None of that would be possible without the support I get from all of you guys on Patreon. I really appreciate it. But yeah, more videos coming soon. I already teased them a little bit. More Out of the Grooves, of course, as per usual. But thank you all a ton for watching. I will see you again very soon, y'all. Stay safe, everyone.